Carlson, tonight we have news for you. Another set of text messages between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page of the FBI has been released. The text suggests that the FBI was directly briefing the Obama White House in the early stages of its investigation of the Trump campaign. If true, this, of course, would prove as false the former president's claim that he was not involved in the FBI business. Byron New York is chief political correspondent for the Washington Examiner, and he joins us tonight. Byron, what do we learn from these?
Well, first of all, it's not really a new set of texts. That's one thing we learned, because this is not some new batch that just went over to Congress. Yes. These texts were released earlier, and they were redacted. They were blacked out. And remember what the Justice Department said to Congress. They said, well, Strzok and Page are having an affair. I mean, that's private stuff,
yes,
personal stuff, so we're going to black that out. And Congress said fine. And then they started looking at what was sent over, and there were things like meeting tomorrow in so-and-so's office, and the name would be blacked out, and they thought, well, that doesn't sound like personal stuff. And some of these names were names like Dennis McDonough, the chief of staff in the Obama White House. So that has made a number of members of the House Judiciary Committee very suspicious of what they're getting from Congress, from the Justice Department on this. Now, the bigger picture is they have been trying to find out in how far knowledge of things like the Trump dossier, the allegations in the Trump dossier, how far did that go up the chain in the Obama administration? Remember, we first thought it was just a few people at the FBI. Then it went higher in the FBI. Then it was the State Department. And now it looks like the White House, too.
And the context for this is the most tense and significant presidential campaign of our lifetimes, where everything kind of hung in the balance, including the Obama legacy. So I was just watching another channel where a very famous lawyer on CNN was telling us that you'd really have to be a nutcase to find any of this interesting, their conspiracy theories. Why wouldn't ordinary Americans of any political persuasion have an interest in knowing if one party is using intel agencies to spy on the other?
Well, you would think they would. As a matter of fact, that's what this new Inspector General investigation that we just heard about yesterday is about. When you hear Republicans say things like FISA abuse, it's about FISA abuse, it's really looking at the Trump dossier. It's looking at how did this happen? How did this British spy, former British spy, Christopher Steele, come to do it? How did he get in touch with the FBI? Why did the FBI agree to pay him for this when he was at the same time being paid by the Clinton?
So why is it, I mean, those are obvious questions. And again, I think everybody has an interest in getting the answers. Why is it so hard to find out the answer? The simple one, was the FBI paying Steele for this dossier?
Yeah.
Not hard. Why don't we know?
The reason we don't know is because the Justice Department has been very, very tight-lipped on all of this. And there are some investigators in Congress. We know who they are. The House Intelligence Committee, the Senate Judiciary Committee have in particular been looking at this. And it's been like pulling like teeth for a year about this. The Justice Department has been open about some things, has not been open about other things. For example, when they started the investigation, when the FBI officially started its investigation, they actually make a document to memorialize what they've done. It was in July of 2016. What's in it? We don't know. They haven't handed it over. So it's been requested and requested and requested. So we've seen this continuous fight. And it's been a bit of a surprise for Republicans, because they thought, well, we're Republicans in Congress, and those are Republicans in the Justice Department. They'll cooperate with us. I think what we've learned is the institutional prerogatives at the FBI, the Justice Department, maybe are more powerful than
they
any other factor.
supersede partisanship. That's
exactly
right. But as the Washington Post reminds us, democracy dies in darkness, and we have a right to know. Thank you very much, Byron.
Thank you, Tucker.
Meanwhile, the sheriff of Orange County, California, is at war with the California state government. Sheriff Sandra Hutchins was on the show earlier this week, says she wants to help catch illegal immigrants. ICE is trying to do that. She's being prevented from doing that by the state. She's now being menaced with a lawsuit or even arrest. Fox's Griff Jenkins is in Southern California tonight on this story. Griff?
Hey, Tucker, I think it's safe to say that California is the unofficial headquarters of the anti-Trump resistance movement, but the president does have some allies here, especially in conservative Orange County. Earlier this week, the County Board of Supervisors voted to join a Trump administration lawsuit against California's sanctuary state law, which has become very controversial. I had a chance to talk to a Republican supervisor, Michelle Steele, who voted to join the lawsuit. She says that while the county resolution is popular, not everyone is happy.
Over 90% overwhelmingly supporting that what we did. But there's a few people that, you're the racist. I've never heard I was a racist. I'm a first-generation Korean American, and, that was the first time I heard.
Now, despite the backlash, the Board of Supervisors definitely isn't alone. San Diego County might also join the lawsuit, and the Orange County Sheriff is also taking measures into its own hands. As you reported earlier this week, the Sheriff will start publishing inmate release dates. It's already up. It's who's in jail list, and it helps ICE capture undocumented immigrants that the state is forcing them to release back into the public. Here's what Orange County Undersheriff Don Barnes told me earlier when we went inside the jail.
We're concerned about our inability to hold people here. Some legislative changes in the state in the last several years. I think the nation will be shocked to know that we're releasing thieves, drug addicts, drug possession, some of these crimes that normally are high-ranking, high-level crimes, but because of some other legislation, they're now misdemeanors.
All of that due to policies pushed by California Governor Jerry Brown and supported by Attorney General Xavier Becerra. The fate of the sanctuary state law is very much to be determined, but I get the sense while being here that the statewide policies are being dictated mostly by California liberals, mostly outside of Orange County, which is traditionally conservative. As for whether San Diego County joins this fray, well, we'll have to find out. And don't change the channel, because I got a whole lot more on my report being here on the ground during Sean's show. Tucker?
Griff Jenkins in California. Thanks, Griff. Well, with the passage of time, the rhetoric on illegal immigration on the left has become increasingly brazen, and the intentions of those who espouse it are less disguised than they've ever been. So in the 1990s, Bill Clinton pledged to deport illegal immigrants. He got elected on that pledge. In the 2000s, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton touted their efforts to secure the border. Then, as president, Obama created DACA and other programs to block deportation for certain favored illegal immigrant groups. And now, in the Trump presidency, the mask is off. The left tells us that no illegal immigrant should ever be deported, even ones who have committed crimes. Not only that, they should be allowed to vote. Cesar Vargas and Jennifer Palmieri have both hinted about that recently on this show. Watch.
I do believe that we should have universal voting for everyone to ensure that everyone has
for citizens of other countries. So,
like, republic.
So Putin should be able to vote here.
No taxation without representation. I believe that. That's a fundamental of this nation, isn't it?
Who comes to the United States and buys a deck of Marlboros and pays a sales tax is entitled to vote. That's what you're saying.
If that person comes here to contribute to the country, let him have a say in his government. Simple as that.
Let foreigners vote. I hope the Democratic Party runs on that. I think it'd be a fun election. Yeah. But the details matter. So you said that non-citizens should never vote in elections. I would argue that your party will overtake you on that question soon, but we'll see.
Well, maybe if Congress never does anything to address immigration.
Would any other country tolerate that? Would that idea be taken seriously any place but in the United States? Mexico doesn't take it seriously. In fact, the Mexican Constitution explicitly says, quote, foreigners shall not in any way involve themselves in the political matters of the country. Nobody's attacking Mexico for that. Mexico's not being denounced as racist for not letting Salvadorans vote, because it's obvious only Mexicans should dictate Mexican politics. That's why Mexico's a country. Only in the United States is there a different standard, and it's because the left sees the new standard as a way to obtain power and hold it forever. Kathy Rue is founding publisher of Catalina magazine, and unlike many on the left, very honest about what she thinks, and we're grateful for that. She joins us tonight. So, Kathy, you think that people who are not citizens of the United States ought to be allowed to vote in federal elections, correct?
I feel that people who are contributing and are humans and are in our society and contributing to our society should have a say, yes, in what happens in our democracy. Yes.
How would we measure that? So would we say that everyone who's making a net contribution, paying more in taxes than they're getting in services, for example, those people can vote? Or people who own property?
At the moment, I mean, we have so many people that are living in this country. We have about 11, 12 million people that are living in this country, contributing to our society, paying their taxes, as that previous guest had said, taxation without representation. So there are so many people who are living here but don't have a voice. So it's been shown that when they do have a voice, they do feel more empowered, and they are part of our society. So
well, they definitely would feel more empowered by voting. There's no doubt. I mean, you're absolutely right on that. They would definitely be empowered.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering what the standard is. So could I be on vacation here from another country and, you know, stay for a while, contribute greatly? How long would I have to stay in order to be able to vote?
Well, I mean, I think it goes state by state. And I think Maryland right now has a few cities that allows undocumented people to vote. So I would wonder how Maryland's doing it. And that's not California, that's Maryland. So I would say
that
maybe
raises a
what
question.
Maryland's doing in other states.
So if foreigners should be allowed to vote in our elections, why shouldn't residents of Mississippi be allowed to vote in California elections?
Exactly, we should. I mean, the United States is the United States. So yeah, if I'm a Floridian and I'm visiting New York, so why can't I vote in New York? Absolutely, I think we should be able to vote wherever we happen to be. Yeah.
Should we be able to vote in Mexico?
Well, if we're contributing to their society and living there for years, and perhaps if there's a law that allows us to, absolutely. But the American way was established with people voting in the 1700s that were undocumented. So we actually were created as a nation of people that were undocumented and voting. So it is the American way.
It was, a nation of illegals for sure. But let's just get back to Mexico. So their constitution says, illegal, undocumented. That's kind of a hybrid of the two. But their constitution says that foreigners are not allowed to participate in any way in their politics. Isn't that racist?
Well, I mean, but America is not racist. That's what makes America so beautiful. America is a melting pot. So that would only make sense that we would allow people who are contributing to our society to vote. So that would make sense.
Okay, so then why are we upset about Russian influence in our elections then? Isn't that kind of what we want? I mean, there are a lot of Russians living here, Russian diplomats living here. Long-term living here. Kislyak, the longtime ambassador here.
I don't think the Russian collusion was people contributing and then going to the polls and caring about their school systems.
Hold on. Why should we, I'm confused. Why should we be worried about foreigners influencing our election on the one hand if you're calling for foreigners to influence our election on the other?
Well, these aren't foreigners. These are people who are living here, working here. Their children are in our schools. They're going to our hospitals. I mean, places where now Trump has ICE visiting to pick up people who are undocumented.
Wait a second. I'm trying to track this because I want to take it seriously, and I do think this is the next frontier in liberalism. I think the Democratic platform will reflect what you're saying probably very soon.
The next frontier in America. You mean the future?
Oh, there's no doubt. Yeah, that's absolutely the future. But so Ambassador Kislyak, the Russian ambassador, spent, I think, like 20 years here. I think his kids grew up here. Certainly a big contributor economically to the city of Washington. Why should I be upset when he votes or influences our politics?
Well,
by this standard.
There's so many people that we are sad that vote, right? But I mean, unfortunately, we don't have people voting that should be voting. We only have, I think, 59% turnout voting right now. So people who do contribute and are great people and contributing should be allowed to vote. So maybe
so that would include good. Well, I'm glad we can give up on the Russian collusion narrative. It was dumb from the beginning, and now I feel good about it because you know what? They're just transitory Americans, undocumented Americans, which I love.
No,
Kathy, yeah. Great to see you, Kathy. Thank you.
Good to see you, yep.
The left says it wants a national conversation on guns, which is, of course, a lie. That's the last thing they want. They want you to be quiet so they can impose their will on you. But let's say they did want an honest conversation. Why wouldn't they honestly state whether they want guns seized from law-abiding American citizens? That might be the beginning of an honest conversation. Well, the left says it wants a frank conversation about guns, and that's always an admirable goal, something that we support wholeheartedly, and so we've tried to have that conversation. Turns out it's very difficult to get anybody who claims to want an honest conversation to state clearly what their goals are on guns. We just spoke, for example, to former Obama administration official Jennifer Palmieri, who's smart and nice, and we asked her really simply, do you support gun confiscation? And here's the answer we got. Do you think the government should ever take guns from law-abiding people? That's not a trick question. It's a sincere question.
I think that there should be an assault weapons ban. I don't think that people need to take their guns away, but I think there should be an assault weapons
people who
ban.
own...
It's not a sincere question.
It is very much a sincere question. It is, as a gun owner, I can promise you, I couldn't tell you how sincere it is.
My husband has a number of guns, too.
That's great. But even if I didn't, should government ever take the guns of people who have not misused them?
I think we've addressed it.
And you don't think it should? You don't think it should? You don't want to answer. We'll show you the rest of that interview with Jim Palmieri later tonight. But first, Richard Goodstein is an attorney. He's advised both of Hillary Clinton's presidential campaigns. He also served as an outside counsel for a group that became the Brady campaign, the big gun control group. Richard Goodstein joins us tonight. Richard, thanks for coming up.
Sure, of course.
So you actually have worked for a gun control group.
I have indeed.
The most famous one before Bloomberg came around.
Right.
And so it's a really simple question. Should the government ever take the firearms of Americans who have not misused them?
The only person that in public life has talked about that is Donald Trump, famously with that bipartisan group in the White House where he said, seize the guns first, due process later. It's the only person that I think any of us have ever heard of who has a vote that counts. He's the only person who suggested that.
Let me just say, he doesn't actually have a vote. He's the executive. But whatever, I couldn't disagree with that more and said so the second he said that. But my question is not about Trump. It's about the left, which is likely to take over Congress, which says it wants to impose common sense gun control in the country. And I just want to know, as a citizen, what does it mean exactly? Will the government ever be, should it ever be allowed to take guns away from people who haven't violated the law?
Yeah, I don't think anybody is suggesting, who has a vote in Congress, any sort of confiscation.
That's not true. That's not true. We've interviewed a number of people on the show who said we need an Australia-style gun buyback.
Which members of Congress?
No,
well, that's different from a seizure. Look,
no, it's not.
Here's what Democrats want. You're interested to know.
Yes.
It's what 97% of the public wants, which is background checks. It's the age limit should be increased, which is do away with bump stocks. It says that we should have a 3-day waiting period. We should, there's a whole list of things.
Okay, but
any one of which is going to make a difference.
Let's keep, and that's debatable, but let's keep going down the list to the assault weapons ban, which is what many Democrats are calling for. Democrats in Florida sponsored a bill calling for an assault weapons ban there that included gun confiscation. It required, Georgia, and required the state of Georgia to take guns from people who had them. There are 300 million, at least, firearms in this country. What do you do about that? That's the core question.
Right. So I think the feeling of, look, assault weapons, can we agree, are designed to mow human beings down and kill them. They're not. What else are they for?
No, because an assault weapon is not an actual category. It's like hate speech.
Well,
it's a fake category made up by polemicists, not people who know anything about firearms. Just because you have a bayonet lug or a flash suppressor or an extending stock does not make your gun more lethal. This is like the dumbest conversation ever. But
no, it's not. When the Congress passed an assault weapon ban in the 90s, they actually defined what it was.
Oh, I'm aware. On the basis of all kinds of cosmetic criteria, and that's why the crime rate was totally unaffected by it. But here's the question. There are tens of millions, maybe 100 million semi-automatic rifles that meet the criteria for a so-called assault rifle.
Right.
They exist. They're in the hands of law-abiding Americans. What do you do with those?
Yes. I heard what Jennifer Palmieri said about this is not a serious topic. I won't say that.
It's the most serious.
I understand. I'm saying the only reason you're throwing that out as a possibility, because, again, nobody in the United States Congress is proposing that, is because everything else is caving in on kind of the Trump White House and so forth. Wait, so let's get the base riled up by talking about confiscation.
It's not the base. Hold on. If you say we want a ban on assault weapons, what does that mean? This is what all the kids lecturing us on television don't want to talk about. You don't want to talk about it, Jen Palmieri.
Oh, I'm happy to talk about it.
What does it mean? Does it mean that you can't buy them? What if you possess one? Can you keep it? Can you give it to your son? Can you buy the ammunition for it? These are the questions that matter.
So Nicholas Cruz mowed down a bunch of students in Florida with a gun he could not have acquired in Connecticut. So Connecticut has figured out a way to pass a statute that would have actually kept Nicholas Cruz from buying the gun. You call it what it is, but everybody else calls it an assault weapon.
You're dodging my question, which is what do you do with the rifles already in circulation? There are tens of millions of them.
That's a problem.
Each one that's a problem. What do you do to solve that problem?
I think the answer is, and again, that's what the study of the kind of whether the assault weapons ban worked or not said, which is the longer it's in effect, the longer, basically those guns kind of wear out, so they kind of rust out. There's no great solution, and
so
again.
Do you think it's in something that we should talk about, taking them away?
No. I'm not.
You never take them away. So you ban the sale of them. Do you ban the transfer of them? Can I give one to a member of my family?
everything that I suggested, which is going to be part of the Democratic agenda, will move the needle a bit. An assault weapons ban, and you basically can quibble with how we define it, but I think it's beyond argument that the assault weapons ban will move the needle a bit.
But I don't know what that means. That's the point. No, I don't know what the definition of it is.
Yeah.
And that's why would I agree to something that you refuse to explain?
Well,
that's what makes me nervous, when people are not straightforward.
Did the guy in Las Vegas use one? Yeah, I think he did. Did the Pulse nightclub use one? Yes. Did Parkland use one? Yes. I mean, the fact is, we know
millions of law-abiding Americans use them every day. Yes.
To mow people down?
No, for sport, for hunting, for self-protection.
They don't use it for hunting. They're not killing deer with assault weapons.
They are.
No, they're not.
And it shows the depth of your lack of knowledge.
No, I'm sorry. I'm actually quite knowledgeable.
Really? Because the 7.62 is legal in many states as a hunting round, and it's used.
Well, the fact is, would people want to do it for sport? They could go to a rifle range and say, let me have that, have my practice, and give it back, just like they would with any other kind of...
So we're not allowed to have personal possession?
No, you're allowed to, but I'm just saying, if you're desperate to go to a range, we can provide for that.
Okay. So there's a high level of social control. That's it. I just want to get that out there, because we should debate this, because we're all citizens here.
I think we should debate all the things I mentioned, of which there is 80 to 97% support in the public.
This is the big one, and that's why I want to talk about it. And thank you for talking about it. I appreciate it. Happily. The rest of our interview with Jennifer Palmieri is next. Beside guns, she also talked about how sexism is one of the reasons Hillary Clinton didn't get elected, because you're sexist. Mark Stein will join us to weigh in on that. Stay tuned. So what's the book about?
So the book is about, I wrote it, I wanted to be consciously forward-looking. I wanted to be consciously optimistic. So I said, I want to write, not a book about the campaign, I want to write a book of advice about, based on, I had two experiences, what I learned watching a woman running for president and the obstacles that I think still exist for women. And I wrote it as a letter to the first woman president because I wanted everyone reading it to believe that's what they could be.
So it's not strictly speaking a political book.
It's really not a political book at all.
So as you assess the obstacles to women rising either in politics or in business or in any field,
right?
Was it exclusively men? Was it other women? Was it a combination?
It is, I think I did not go into Hillary's campaign thinking that it was a big deal to elect the first woman president, or that it was going to be hard, okay? I feel like I've had a great career. I've had men and women both that supported me, great mentors, and I thought we had equality. But there is a question about women and ambition that exists. When Hillary was a senator, right? She was really popular. People liked her a lot in that job. When she was Secretary of State, she was really popular. People liked her in that job. When she was a candidate for Senate, she wasn't as popular. She confounded them. And I think it is because she has always been a woman who was stepping out of roles that women traditionally have. I mean, do you believe that the hatred that exists for Hillary Clinton is rational? Do you think that she is deserving? Do you think that Hillary Clinton has done so much in her life that she is deserving of the hatred? Does it not strike you as if something's amiss there?
I don't know. I mean, I marvel at how much I'm disliked sometimes. I'll be honest with you. I will say you, my friend, are not disliked the way Hillary Clinton is. I will say this, which I think is actually interesting, and you can speak to it. You've been in Democratic politics for more than 20 years. You worked for Leanne Panetta and John Edwards and Bill Clinton. You worked for Hillary Clinton. All of those people, while liberal maybe for the time, by today's standards are conservative Democrats. I mean, let's be honest.
The country has moved. The country
That's really my question. So Hillary Clinton could never run for any office on her husband's 1992 platform. That's true.
But
no Democrat could.
No, the country has changed since 1992. The country is not dealing with the same problems it's dealing with since 1992. It's a very different thing. But that is not what my book is about. What my book is about is recognizing that there are still problems, there are still obstacles that stand in the way, some which women, some which we have inherited, some which live in, my own mind in terms of, inhibitions I feel about being able to speak my mind, or if I say this, am I going to be attacked? And what I am doing in the book is saying, don't worry so much about whether or not you think your your perspective matters. Let me promise you that it does. Let me promise you you have something interesting to say. Let me promise you if you're a woman at a table and there's mostly men around you, your perspective is more important, not less. Like, those are the lessons that I had to learn in working in a White House.
Jennifer Palmieri, thank you for that.
Thank you, Tucker.
We tried to be fair in the way we presented that. It was a very long conversation, so if you want to hear more, it's on our Facebook page, which is Tucker Carlson Tonight. Leave a comment if you're there. It'll go up also on foxnews.com. For a reaction to what you just saw, author and columnist Mark Stein joins us. Mark, that conversation got me thinking about, she asked, I thought actually a pretty good question, which is why do people dislike Hillary Clinton so much? And I think I actually thought about it, because Hillary is not the most offensive on policy among all Democrats, but she grates. Why is that? And I think it's because there's this weird thing that she does where she sells herself as a very strong figure, and I think she is tough, actually. It's one thing I like about her. And then when attacked, immediately retreats into the victim pose. You can't say that I'm a woman, you're sexist. And you just sort of think that's unfair. That's not good sportsmanship. Like, pick one. Are you ferocious and tough, or are you weak and persecuted? Does that bother you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's actually the problem. But that duality, as it were, I think derives from her role. She's not only someone who's a politician in her own right, but she was also, for many years, and this is how she came to national prominence, the spouse of a prominent politician. And I think that's the difference. When you look at, I was struck by the subtitle of Jennifer Palmieri's book, An Open Letter to the Women Who Will Run the World. Well, actually, outside the Democrat Party and outside America, women do run a lot of the world. I don't happen to agree with them. I mean, Angela Merkel has single-handedly wrecked Europe by letting in millions of phony baloney refugees. Theresa May is going all super wobbly on Brexit. But what they're not is the wife of the previous guy, which doesn't pass the smell test. Well, and you can't shatter the glass ceiling when you're doing this Latin American Eva Peron thing.
That's such a good point. But shouldn't it be off limits, just as a matter of fairness, to pose as someone who's tough and decisive, and then when questioned, as you would question anybody who seeks to have power over you, whip around and accuse the person of bias for asking a conventional question? Like, that shouldn't be allowed.
No, and again, I think what's interesting to me is that the rest of the world has moved way beyond this. So all this talk about how America is uniquely sexist, I don't get. I sat in the Australian Parliament during Prime Minister's Question Time and watched Julia Gillard, a Labour Prime Minister who I don't happen to agree with, and Julie Bishop, the Deputy Leader of Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition at that time, clobbering each other back and forth. And neither of them would say, if it all goes wrong, they don't say, oh, stop beating up on me, I'm a woman. The fact is, this disastrous investment in Hillary Clinton, to go back to what you've been talking about on the rest of the show, I mentioned this on your show a couple of months back, and I think it's an important point. One reason the party has gone left is because Democratic centrists were represented by the kleptocrat Clintons for so long.
Yes.
So if you're in the Democrat Party and you don't want to feel dirty because the Clintons are in it for themselves, they're opportunists, they're running this rotten charity which is basically there to provide them with a head of state lifestyle when the public declines to make them heads of state. If you're a Democrat, the left is the comparatively clean side of the party.
Right. It's totally right. They discredited by their sleaziness centrist politics. That's a very smart point, which I'd never thought of, but I think you're absolutely right.
That has huge repercussions, and Jen Palmieri ought to be addressing that instead of condescendingly telling the rest of the world that Hillary is the future, because that ain't true.
Very smart. Mark Stein, as always, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Tucker.
Our biggest state, California, is in steep decline, free fall, but leaders there.
The law prohibits police from cooperating with or detaining criminal aliens for ICE.
With thousands living in close proximity on Skid Row, hygiene is always an issue. But with an official outbreak of hepatitis A, it's now a necessity.
Just before midnight on March 3rd, Anderson was driving his semi-truck on I-70 when police say he was hit and killed. The man charged with Anderson's death is Ivan Zamarripa Castaneda. He's an undocumented immigrant out on bond, wanted by ICE.
The Golden State has lost its glow, obviously. California now has more poverty than any state. Homelessness is completely out of control. State officials are still focused on protecting illegal immigrants from deportation rather than any of the problems the state faces, including the flight of its entire middle class. It's a sad picture. One man who sees it clearly is someone who's been there a long time, actor and model Fabio. He's an immigrant to the state, but not one of those state officials care about. Fabio joins us tonight. So, Fabio, thanks for coming on. I want to read, I don't live there anymore, but I read about California every day. Here are two headlines. Tell me if they sum up what it's like now. This is just from the other day. Orange County homeless camp cleanup, 400 tons of debris, 14,000 needles, 5,000 pounds of human waste. Here's the second. California lowers the penalty for knowingly exposing someone to HIV. It sounds chaotic and dirty. Is that your experience?
Yeah, well, let me tell you something right now about California. It looks like a wild, wild west. And don't look farther than the leaders of California, Jerry Brown, Levy, the mayor of Oakland. You know, yes. Jerry Brown, with Proposition 4757, Bill 109, he took totally the side of the criminals. He went on a criminal side, totally turned his back on law enforcement. And, the leaders of California, they're acting criminals. They're acting like criminals. So what do you expect the rest of the people are going to do? Then you have the mayor of Oakland who totally tell all the criminals to run away because ICE is coming over. So instead to do over 900 arrests, they only arrest about, I think, 120, 130 people. Then you have, the homeless. The homeless, if you go downtown Los Angeles, I'm telling you, Tucker, it's like I've been around the world. I remember being 30 years ago in Africa. Africa doesn't look like that. It's unbelievable. Not even a third world country 30 years ago look like California right now, like downtown. You go down to the library. It's like Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, it's like sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's in the library. It's in the library. I mean, you should do a total segment on the library. A public library downtown Los Angeles, and I'm telling you, it's unbelievable. It's like Sodom and Gomorrah.
Only Californian librarians would put up with that. So, yes. What year did you get to California? When did you move there?
About in '92.
'92.
But now, now I just
changed.
go back and forth because I live in Washington. Because I'm telling you, it's like the California leaders, they totally destroyed the middle class in California.
Yes.
The majority of California is broken. You have a few wealthy people, about 5,700 people pay almost 40%, 37% exactly, of the entire California income tax.
That's unbelievable.
Because California is broke.
It's unbelievable.
On top of that, let me tell you, it's unbelievable. On top of that, every single company is running away because of tax reason, and including the movie industry.
Of course they are.
Every single movie outside of California.
We're going to be there soon. We're bringing the show to California, and we will see you then. Fabio, thank you. Hang in there.
Thank you so much.
It's time for Final Exam. Can you beat our experts when it comes to what happened this week in the news? You'll find out next. Has been paying closer attention to what's going on in the world this past week. Our defending champion this week, Fox national correspondent Peter Doocy, is going for his second win in a row. His challenger, who was also his challenger for the very first edition of this segment, is Fox's Elizabeth Pran. They both join us on set. It's great to see you both. I know you know the rules.
I do know the rules. The future champion knows the rules.
But for the sake of our viewers just tuning in, I'm going to repeat them very quickly. Hands on buzzers. I ask the questions. First one to buzz in gets to answer the question. You have to wait till I finish asking it in order to answer it. Each correct answer worth 1 point. Each incorrect gets a point subtracted from your total best of 5 wins. You ready?
I'm so ready.
Okay, good.
Are you ready?
I've been practicing.
I'm kind of rooting for me as well. I'm kind of too. I don't know if you can tell.
You know, if you're not on your own side, who will be? All right, first question. Which Democratic senator chastised Hillary Clinton this week for saying that voters from her state are looking backward? Peter Ducey.
I think that is Heidi Heitkamp.
Heidi Heitkamp. Now, you preface that by saying, I think.
I thought enough to to ring the alarm.
To ring the alarm, also known as the buzzer. Was it Heidi Heitkamp? To the tape we go.
Missouri Senator Claire McCaskill slamming Hillary Clinton for her recent remarks
I was just there,
on why she lost the 2016 election.
It felt like she was criticizing Missouri voters, and I would draw, talking about drawing a line, I would draw a line there. I have great respect for Missouri voters, and there are a lot of reasons they voted for Donald Trump, some of which I completely understand.
So the Missouri senator has complete respect for Missouri voters, not for North Dakota voters, though.
I don't know that. I don't know anything about it.
It's so funny because I was going to call him out, and I'm like, well, I don't know.
No, I didn't either, actually. Question two. Let's see if you know.
I know this one for sure.
Roseanne Barr, not a senator, says liberals became too extreme during the 2016 election. That's the headline. The other night, she confronted a late-night show host for going too far to the left. Who did she confront?
I want to say
Elizabeth Brandt.
Stephen Colbert?
Stephen Colbert. Did she confront Stephen Colbert?
Jimmy Fallon.
I think.
I'm shocked because I know you were a very liberal, socially liberal person in general.
That was kind of, yeah.
I mean,
I'm still the same. You all, you all went so far out, you lost everything.
I didn't say Stephen Colbert. I said Jimmy Kimmel.
You did. It just sounded.
It just sounded like this S and the J.
Well, both are kind of French names. Okay, so for the first time in the history of the show, we now have -1 to negative.
Is that really the
yes,
first
that's
time
true.
this has ever happened?
It's the first time it's ever happened. Okay. No one's ever done this
So
before.
we're kind of winning.
We have 3 more. Someone can get to 0 if we try hard. Question 3. There's an object in space right now the size of a school bus, and it's falling to Earth even as we speak. There is a slight chance it could hit the United States. What is that object? Elizabeth Brandt.
Chinese space station?
It's a Chinese space station. Is it a Chinese space station?
The Chinese space station is heading for Earth after losing communication with an 18,000
I'm done. Can we go? Are we done? Are we done?
About 3 years ago. When did you know this
That's the only one I'm
weekend it's
going to get right.
come down somewhere?
Most of it will burn up. About 10 to 40% of it will reach the Earth.
There you go.
This is the only one I'm going to get right. So are we done?
Taking the lead at 0.
Are we done?
We're not. We have 2 more. You can get into positive territory. You can too, actually. The game's still wide open. 2 more questions. Number 4. Which former president has gone viral online after being filmed dancing enthusiastically at a family wedding?
Oh, wait.
It is George W. Bush.
George W. Bush.
Yes.
Says Peter Ducey. Roll the tape, please.
Former President George W. Bush is going viral after tearing up the dance floor at his nephew's wedding. Watch this.
There he is, Bob.
They don't seem worried at all about the falling space station.
Totally knew this one. I knew this one. These are broken.
So with 80% of the segment concluded, we are now 0 to 0. But whatever, it's a relative measure. So the person who wins this question, who answers it correctly, wins the segment. Are you ready? All right. Final question. The Los Angeles Rams announced this week that in an NFL first, their cheerleading squad would see a major change this season. What is that change? Elizabeth Brandt.
Male cheerleaders.
I don't believe you.
You know what? I think they should do this for Major League Baseball. I don't know why.
Are there cheerleaders in Major League Baseball?
No.
Mascots.
No, Miami does have cheerleaders, I think.
But you can cheer from the stands. Is the change male cheerleaders?
Back now with a big change coming to the NFL. For the first time ever, men will be on a cheerleading squad. Quentin and Napoleon will be on the sidelines for the LA Rams.
You know what? I see a second career for you.
Well, now I didn't even know that.
Okay, so for extra credit, the question is this an improvement or the end of everything we hold dear?
Oh, boy, I don't feel like we should say anything.
Too subjective, you're absolutely right. Elizabeth Brandt, you are the winner. I can't believe that. Unseating a seasoned victor.
This is never going to happen.
And now you're the winner of the coveted Eric Wemple mug, commemorating his appearance on this show, Washington Post Eric Wemple. Drink coffee from that and think of us. Elizabeth Brandt,
does it have to be
congratulations. It doesn't. It can be any beverage of your choice, including wine. We will see you next week. Peter, I know that we will see you again. You are this were match game 76, you'd be that Brett Lee. You'd be the woman who always comes back. Yeah.
I'm glad there were no questions about
match game 76. That's all for this week's Final Exam.